Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, Context is Everything Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a book. This is a self-help book called Dissolving the Ego and Realizing the Self. We're on Chapter 9 today, which is in the Realizing the Self portion of the book, and it is titled Presence of God. We have about 20 tidbits of knowledge from the author David R. Hawkins about the concept of the presence of God and the realizing the self, the true self, capital S self. And here we go. The presence of God. One might say the goal of spiritual work is to discover the presence of God, not as a transcendent, out-there entity, but as a radically subjective experience of divinity within as well as without. Here, Dr. Hawkins provides direction and inspiration and clarification to support this realization. The first evidence of the presence of God is an awakening curiosity or interest in spiritual matters. That is the crack in the ego's dam. When a person begins to desire or practice spiritual goals or pursue spiritual information, the presence is already taking hold of his life. The experience of the presence of God is available and within at all times, but it awaits choice. The choice is made only by surrendering everything other than peace and love to God. In return, the divinity of the self is autonomously revealed as ever-present but not experienced. That's because it has been ignored or forgotten, or one has chosen otherwise. Because mankind is an actualization of a potential by its source, that source is ever present and directly knowable as the subjective essence of the self. The experience of the presence of self is transformative, and it is also identical throughout history, as reported by the sages of widely divergent cultures. The gift of divinity is potentiality within man's own consciousness. To return via that consciousness to the very source of his existence, with the realization of the self, the infinite context, the field of the content merge into the reality of oneness of the source itself. The totality of the oneness of the all cannot be experienced. Instead, it is known by virtue of being. It, the I, letter I, of the capital S self, is the eyeball of God, witnessing the unfolding of creation as now. The I of the self is the eye of God, witnessing the unfolding of creation as now. Sequence is an illusion created by the perception of the I, letter I, ego, which is the point of observation of the processing of the non-local to the local, of the non-linear to the linear, of allness to thisness. Perception is the eyeball, of the ego, which as it translates the unexperienceable infinite to the experienceable finite, produces the perception of time, place, duration, dimension, position, form, limitation, and singularity. The discovery of presence of God is not due to fear, but to the surrender that was presented by the fear, that was precipitated by the fear. Pardon the rattling. With the cessation of time, the door swings open to an eternity of joy. The love of God becomes the reality of presence. The knowingness of the truth of all life and existence stands forth with stunning self-revelation. The wonderment of God is so all-encompassing and enormous that it surpasses all possible imagination. To be at last truly and finally home is profound in the totality of its completeness. The presence of God is the quintessence of profound peace, stillness, and love. It is overwhelming in its profundity. It is totally enveloping, and the love is so powerful that it dissolves any remaining non-love held by the residual ego. The infinite presence of all things is beyond all time and space, forever complete, perfect, and whole. All points of observation disappear, and there is the omnipresence of that which knows all by the fact that it is all. As reality stands forth, it is stunning self-evidence, an infinite peace. It appears that the block to realization was the mind itself, which is not different from the ego. They are one and the same. The presence of God. All suffering ceases in the presence of God. One is returned to one's source, which is not different from one's own, capital S, self. It is as though one had forgotten, or is now awakened from a dream. All fears are revealed to be groundless. All worries are foolish imaginings. There is no future to fear, nor past to regret. There is no errant ego self to admonish or correct. There is nothing that needs changing or improving. There is nothing about which to feel ashamed or guilty. There is no other from which one can be separated. No loss is possible. Nothing needs to be done. No effort is required. And one is free from the endless tug of desire and want. The term self emphasizes that God is discovered within us, ultimate reality, and underlies one's actual existence in the here and now. To quote the Bible, the kingdom of God is within you. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please subscribe. My name is John Michael at the Context is Everything Media Network. I used to be a teacher. I'm reading this. I will continue to read things for the time being, but I will also begin to discuss things as I did as a teacher because, hey, when I was a teacher, some students said, you should start a podcast, and I thought, maybe. And now 5 years later, I'm thinking, right. So please subscribe. Context is Everything Media Network. Yes. Question. What is the subjective experience or realization of allness like? Answer. It is an awareness of a condition that has always been present. The novelty of sequential experiencing disappears, as do expectations, regret, or the desire to anticipate or control. Existence as existence is total and complete. All one needs are already fulfilled. There is nothing to gain or lose, and everything is of equal value. It would be like all movies being equally enjoyable because the pleasure stems from going to the movies. The movie that is playing is irrelevant. To surrender identification with which was presumed to be me allows the real me to shine forth as immanent quality of divinity, that is, the source of the unencumbered reality of I. The sense of I is an identification with an inner knowingness, with a knowingness that are qualities of the inner presence, which enable the capacity to know the I of the self, capital S. Stripped from all pretense, the inner self of I-ness merely knows itself without any content. No concepts are possible in the infinite light of the glory of God. There is a profound peace, safety, and at-homeness. Completion has finalized. The prevalence of inner silence is the threshold of dawning realization that everything is happening of itself and that nothing is causing anything. One becomes aware that such constructions are merely forms of mental entertainment. One can realize the self as the primordial irreducible reality from any starting point. It is not the starting point that is important, but the dedication to relentlessly pursuing it to its very roots. To unravel the nature of experience leads to one's source. Any leg of the elephant leads to the elephant. The infinite field of the source of all existence is a radiant effulgence that shines forth, and its consequences as creation are forever unified. Creator and creation are one. The experience of divinity within as self or God immanent is quite different from belief in God transcendent. It is for this reason that the Buddha counseled against all depictions of the nominalizations of God, because enlightenment is a condition or state in which the self-knowing is that of identity. In this condition or state, there is no this, such as self, with which to describe the self. The condition or state is best described as self-effulgent, and in that state of knowingness is its own reality. The ego mind is as learned as the ego mind is a learned set of behaviors, and the ultimate goal is to transcend this programming and functioning by virtue of the power of radiance of the self, which recontextualizes life benignly. The presence of the self, experienced as the compassion for all of life in all its expressions, including its evolution as one's personal self, lowercase self. As a consequence, forgiveness replaces condemnation, which is a sign that it is now safe to proceed deeper into the serious inner inventory without undue stress. To be at one with phenomena instead of separate from them results in experiencing the aliveness and allness of the presence expressed as all that exists. All that has existence is not just passively there, but instead seemingly presents itself to awareness as a quality of its existence rather than as a volitional intention. Thus the universe appears to be a gift of exquisite beauty and perfection that shines forth with the intrinsic radiance of divinity. Eventually, even the illusion of witnessed observer dissolves into awareness consciousness itself, which is discovered to be non-personal and autonomous. There is no longer the limitation of cause and effect or change. The illusion of time also dissolves into the allness of divine concordance. There is neither attraction nor aversion to existence itself, for even the manifest is seen to be a consequence of discernment by consciousness as a concept. The realization of the presence of divinity unfolds of its own when ego and its perceptual positionalities are surrendered. The peace of God experientially transcends all prior states, as exquisite as they might have been. Divine love is all-inclusive field. Its quality is unforgettable. As anyone who has ever had a near-death experience knows, it is intrinsically truly ineffable, and its presence is like a meltingness in the exquisite experiential totality. There is nothing in worldly life that even comes close to it. It is profoundly gentle, yet infinitely powerful by virtue of its intrinsic infinite strength. Innate to the presence of love is the quality of timelessness, foreverness. Even a brief moment of presence in the earthly time is realized via the self to be eternal. This is an unmistakable hallmark. Therefore, to have known the real for even a few brief moments of clock time is to know it forever, the real being capitalized. Divinity and infinite love, within its presence, even relinquishment of body existence is not a problem or source of resistance. As the ego dissolves, so do its fears and presumptions. The inner reality is immune to considerations or doubts. The self is certainty. The radiance of God is the light of awareness that reveals the divinity of all that exists. In the stillness of the infinite presence, the mind is silent. As there is nothing that can be said, all speaks to itself with completeness and exactitude. With this realization, one transcends the final duality of existence versus non-existence, because only existence is possible. The opposite of truth does not exist, since reality excludes non-reality. In this realization resides the peace of God. Fear itself actually precludes the awareness of presence of God. Only when it is abandoned does profound surrender of the resistant ego reveal a peace beyond understanding. There is nothing more wonderful than arriving back home again at one's source. The illusion is that one struggles with spiritual growth by one's own effort. In fact, we are pulled into greater awareness by the will of God expressed as the Holy Spirit, and all that is necessary to allow it to happen by surrendering completely, for truly only God is God. And that is the chapter. God bless and have a lovely day. Goodbye. Please subscribe if you made it this far.